Sheryl Swoopes' hatred of Caitlin Clark, it's rooted in racial idolatry. It's rooted in bigotry. Swoopes is using her racial jealousy and Clark's clout to elevate Sheryl Swoopes.
When a rookie breaks more than 60 WNBA records, is it appropriate for a Hall of Famer to criticize her for not dominating and insinuate that her team would still qualify for the playoffs without her? Caitlin Clark is upset at Sheryl Swoopes' remarks from the previous week. After closely examining all of Sheryl Swoopes' remarks regarding Caitlin Clark, I've noticed a concerning trend. She has made untrue claims about Clark playing 5 or 6 seasons in college before dismissively saying, "Nobody wants to play for Indiana," just before they became a hot free agency destination. The inconsistencies are hard to ignore. Furthermore, she stated unequivocally that the Indiana Fever would be better off without Clark taken together. Serious doubts were generated by Swoopes' comments on her viewpoint on Clark's increasing success.
What possible excuse could you have talking about the Indiana Fever and nary a mention of Caitlin Clark? How is that possible? How's that possible? You know what Indiana was before she arrived. You know what their attendance was before she arrived. You know what merchandise sales was before she arrived.
The amount of attacks that Sheryl Swoopes has launched at Caitlin Clark is astounding. It's a recurring pattern that makes you wonder, surely she won't say something else. But then she does, and because these attacks have become so obvious and frequent, the basketball community is unable to stop discussing them.
That ain't the point, Sheryl Swoopes. Yes, I did listen to your entire podcast. You didn't mention Caitlin Clark. So I was right, number one. Number two, your personal relationship, what that got to do with your coverage? Ain't nobody said don't mention them. Ain't nobody said don't applaud them. Nobody told you to ignore them. What we're saying is if you're going to give the Indiana Fever all the credit in the world, how you going to mention the Indiana Fever without Caitlin Clark's name even coming up?
When Swoopes initially referred to Clark as an overrated gimmick, she did in fact use those words to characterize the player who is revolutionizing women's college basketball in front of us. This dismissal from a Hall of Famer with Swoopes' legacy is startling when you consider that Clark was bringing the game unprecedented attention when
Question whether her comments were motivated by bigotry. Swoopes claimed black people can't be racist and that she has white friends.
When people pointed out these errors, Swoopes usually responded professionally by apologizing or correcting the statement. However, when asked about her remarks, Swoopes took a different tack, saying that black people cannot be racist and that her white friends listen to this.
For people to come at me and say that I made those comments because I'm a racist, like, first of all, black people can't be racist, but like, that's the farthest thing from my mind. Like, I grew up in a very small West Texas town, predominantly white. My best childhood friend is white, went to predominantly white. College, won a national championship, pretty much everyone on the team.
The timing seems suspicious. Why would a respected legend criticize a rookie who is bringing enormous attention to the sport when most pioneers welcome anyone who helps it grow? Her defensive response, echoing well-known sports controversies where veterans feel threatened by rising stars, came just as Clark was revolutionizing college basketball and boosting the women's game like never before. Sheryl, when Caitlin Clark broke the all-time NCAA scoring record, Swoopes wasn't done disparaging her. Instead of recognizing the incredible accomplishment, Swoopes instituted a strange new rule that states that a record must be broken by being surpassed the same number of times it was set in order to be considered truly broken.
Just for Caitlin, but you asked me about Caitlin. If you're going to break a record, to me, if it's legitimate, you have to break that record in the same amount of time that that player set.
This reasoning is incomprehensible since, as if breaking a long-standing record once isn't enough, Swoopes' fabrications on Clark's accomplishments create a concerning trend.
Kelsey Plum set that record in 4 years. Well, Caitlin should have broke that record in 4 years. But because there's a COVID year and then there's another year, you know what I mean? So she's already had an extra year to break that record. So is it truly a broken record?
She made a false assertion that Clark had an additional COVID year to break it in an effort to lower Clark's scoring record. The facts: Clark only participated in 3 complete seasons in addition to her co-shortened freshman year, which was a major lie intended to downplay how remarkable her accomplishment was.
record books as Caitlin Clark is the all-time, whatever it is. I don't even know what the number is, but that's the way it'll be. And I don't think it should.
Anyone familiar with Clark's career is aware that she played college basketball for 3 years, which is basic knowledge even casual fans are aware of. Swoopes' obvious mistake begs the question of whether she deliberately attempted to minimize Clark's accomplishments by suggesting that she had more time than others to accumulate her stats, ironically to add interest. In fact, Clark played less games and beat Kelsey Plum's record.
According to Swoopes, she used her extra year of eligibility. So is that true? Well, a simple search would show Clark has only played 3 years. So if she wanted to take a COVID year, an extra year of eligibility, she could. That's what makes her run that much more remarkable. She is on the cusp of becoming the #1 scorer all time, and she has played in less games.
In sports, adding 3 years to someone's age is significant. It makes the difference between being regarded as a phenom and a mature player at their peak. She claimed that Clark was 25 years old when, in reality, he was 22. This wasn't a casual remark. Rather, it was a specific assertion that made Clark's accomplishments seem unremarkable.
Right? So people say, dang, like he or she's killing them, but you have a 25-year-old playing against a 20-year-old. Like, you should be killing them. Because you've been doing it a lot longer than they have.
What's really shocking is how easily these claims could be verified. A quick Google search would show Clark's true age, her college schedule, and the free agency moves, demonstrating that Indiana was a desirable destination. Nevertheless, Swoopes made these claims with total assurance on public platforms that reached millions of people. Did she believe no one would check her claims? Or was she so devoted to her story that the facts became irrelevant?
Once more, a simple search would show this. Caitlin Clark is not 25. She's not the elder stateswoman rather. On January 22nd, her birthday, she turned 22.
These weren't careless or sporadic blunders. Rather, they all pointed in the same direction, undermining Clark's accomplishments. It could be a mistake to cast doubt on her credibility and diminish her influence on the game with a single false comment. An ongoing pattern of untrue statements, everybody working for the same goal, indicates something far more profound.
At this point, considering the lengths Sheryl Swoopes has gone to deceive the truth, it feels like she just flat out despises Caitlin Clark, Clark's game, or is woefully misinformed.
When faced with contradicting facts, most analysts admit their mistakes and change their viewpoint. But Swoopes stuck to her position in spite of overwhelming evidence that suggested this wasn't about basketball analysis at all, but rather personal. The way she doubled down even after being corrected speaks volumes.
From Steve Del Vecchio, Clark has had a major impact on women's college basketball, and attendance numbers are just one example of that. Swoopes doesn't have to think Clark is the best player of all time, but the 6-time WNBA All-Star should be embarrassed by how unprepared she sounded in the interview.
You would think that Swoopes would have moderated her criticism after witnessing the rookie's unprecedented impact when she finally made her WNBA debut, but instead she intensified it to an entirely new level of ridiculousness. Even as Clark was making history during her first professional season, Swoopes was on her podcast making claims that went against all common sense and basketball reality. Clark broke over 60 records during her rookie season, breaking major statistical milestones that define greatness and changing the norm for rookie seasons in the WNBA. Despite this, Swoopes insisted that Clark wasn't truly dominating or altering the game.
We say her stats are today, what?
20 points, 8.4 assists, 6 rebounds.
That's crazy.
But 5
That's crazy.
5.6
Is that
turnovers.
Those are hell of a number.
Those are hell of a number.
But to me, that's not
Period.
dominating.
The majority of rookies who score well aren't also great playmakers, and those who accumulate assists are usually not volume scorers. Clark's numbers were historically exceptional. She became the best scoring rookie in WNBA history as well as the rookie assist leader. The textbook definition of a generational talent is that Clark performed both better than any rookie ever had, but Swoopes couldn't bring herself to admit it. The most ridiculous assertion was made by Swoop on her podcast.
I don't know if Chicago's in the playoffs right now without Angel, right?
Yeah.
Is Indiana, is Indiana in the playoffs right now without Caitlin? I don't know.
Well,
She basically made the argument that the Fever, a team that had been struggling for years prior to Clark's arrival, would have achieved comparable success without her. This assertion followed Clark's 35-point performance against Washington, in which she made 7 3-pointers, setting a rookie record. The Fever, who had finished 531 the season before, were suddenly competitive with Clark leading their offense. She went a step further and implied that a role player on the Fever was actually more valuable than Clark. This was about a rookie who became the face of the franchise, the mainstay of the offense, and the reason thousands of new fans flocked to arenas across the country. Her mental gymnastics became even more twisted when she made this claim.
When you look at the overall team, like the pieces that they have, without question, Indiana has better players than Chicago, from top to bottom. No doubt about it.
I don't know about that.
Okay.
I don't know about that.
Okay. Well, they had 3 All-Stars. Chicago had 1. But let's also remember Aaliyah Boston was Rookie of the Year last.
Swoopes reasoned that even though the Fever had a stronger roster than Chicago would somehow suffer more without their star than Indiana would without Clark.
You go down the roster,
Okay.
player for player.
I feel that.
Like, look at Chicago. Kennedy Carter is can't nobody guard her. They just can't. But
after
else?
that.
Yeah, but who?
Not only did Swoopes attack Clark's on-court performance, but she also broadened her campaign to make wildly inaccurate predictions about the Indiana Fever organization as a whole. For example, when she boldly stated that no one wants to play for the Indiana Fever because of alleged locker room drama, this prediction spectacularly backfired, exposing the true nature of her commentary for everyone to see. In reality, the Indiana Fever became the WNBA's top free agency destination, luring major players like Sydney Colson and Dana Bonner.
Fever did not come to play. They are on a mission to win now, like 2025 championship season incoming. They were so quiet during free agency. And in the past 24 hours, boom, boom, boom. Re-signed Kelsey Mitchell to a max deal. Picked up Natasha Howard, bringing her back to the Indiana Fever, where she was originally drafted. And then they just announced a 3-way trade, sending Alyssa Smith to Dallas and Sophie Cunningham coming to the Fever. This team in 24 hours just got exponentially better.
Despite Swoopes' assertions, these well-known players choose Indiana. How could someone with such a strong connection to women's basketball get something so essentially incorrect unless there was another factor influencing her analysis? This fits a distinct pattern of Swoopes making unfounded claims that only serve to minimize Clark's accomplishments and influence. When confronted with reality, her predictions fell apart like a house of cards. Her criticism was based on something other than basketball knowledge. There was proof of Clark's influence everywhere. As soon as she was drafted, Fever Games ticket sales skyrocketed, and when Indiana came to town, arenas that couldn't fill half of them abruptly sold out. Networks rushed to broadcast more Fever Games nationwide as WNBA TV ratings surged, and WNBA-related social media engagement hit previously unheard of heights.
So yes, the WNBA was growing before Caitlin Clark. Make that abundantly clear. But it was growing incrementally compared to the exponential growth you're seeing now. And this is just data, this is just objective facts. Be mad with data, please do not be.
The intriguing thing about Swoopes' position is how she disregards these indisputable truths. When faced with factual proof of Clark's transformational influence, it seems as though she lives in a different basketball world where attendance statistics and television ratings don't exist. Swoop either denies it outright or blames it on other causes.
Ever-loving mind. Because you're literally putting the lack of professional objectivity on display for audiences to see, and then you're looking at us acting like what's wrong. It's like you spitting in people's face telling them it's raining. Makes no sense. Makes no sense.
There is a clear discrepancy between Swoopes' remarks and what was actually happening on the court and in the basketball industry. This isn't basketball analysis. It's something else completely. Analyzing basketball entails looking at impact and performance data to draw conclusions. Swoopes begins by concluding that Clark isn't as significant or good as everyone claims, and then looks for or creates proof to back up that opinion. The concerning aspect of this case is how Swoopes persisted in doubling down when confronted with conflicting information on Clark's actual length of college career or her effect on viewership. Swoopes refused to change her mind.
Sheryl Swoopes, you beautiful, actually not so beautiful. You tell us that, well, Caitlin Clark used an extra year. Shoots 40 times a game. Sheryl Swoopes is among the dumbest people ever and one of the most talented ever. Really, if you look at Sheryl Swoopes' basketball history, she certainly should be considered among the greats, but all that goes away when you're inherently...
Television networks rushed to air Iowa games that might have previously gone unnoticed, as Clark was literally altering the landscape of women's basketball games by breaking viewership records on a regular basis. Regular season college games received attention typically reserved for championships.
Men lie, women lie, numbers don't. And that's what that said. She's Neo, right? Like, they were in the Matrix messing with the machines and stuff before he got there, but they needed the one. And the one showed up, and then it took it to a whole nother level. That's what she is.
Yeah.
They've been looking for her, and she could bend the spoon. She figured it out. You need a star to break.
A youthful player raising awareness of women's basketball and a legend who seems intent on undermining those accomplishments are in stark contrast. When taken as a whole, these remarks show something more profound than basketball analysis or helpful criticism. Swoop avoided answering her own remarks by trying to dispel charges of bias by making assertions about who can or cannot be racist based on identity. This justification is insufficient to explain the pattern of primarily focusing on Clark.
A lot of the time. Juneteenth. There's just a lot of things. I get it. Like, support our culture. I get it. Support the culture. But, like, damn. Like, you kind of put it in everybody's face and you almost wanted to make it look like it is about that, but you try to...
The fact that all of this happened while Clark was still in college and before she had even entered the WNBA draft makes it all the more remarkable. Swoopes was criticizing a young athlete who hadn't yet had the chance to establish herself professionally in sports. Established veterans usually hold off on passing judgment until rookies demonstrate their abilities at the professional level, which makes Swoopes' early criticism all the more odd. Swoopes' actions reveal a consistent pattern that seems to be rooted in racial jealousy. She appears reluctant to accept a white player attaining unparalleled success in a league where Black women have traditionally been the most famous personalities, despite the facts pointing to an uncomfortable reality. This circumstance represents a lost chance rather than a celebration of Clark's ability to draw in millions of new viewers. Swoopes has opted for disdain and criticism as the WNBA sees incredible expansion. One of its legends disparages its newest celebrity. These acts serve as a reminder that, in order to advance, we must welcome change and fresh perspectives, even when they contradict conventional wisdom. Women's basketball's future rests on unity rather than divisiveness.